If you're a facilities manager at a university, you know students rely on the cafeteria for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the occasional late-night snack. So when a dishwasher breaks down and dirty plates pile up, the mess hall can turn messy in the blink of an eye. Enter Grainger. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast delivery, the product you need now is never far away. So you can turn that dishwasher back into a lean, clean washing machine. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I want to talk about a section of society, a group of society that tends to gravitate to the types of people that I consider as know-it-alls. Like they know everything, and they act like they know everything. They believe they know everything, but as we know, most know-it-alls do not know hardly anything. They might know some, but they act like they know everything. And the same type of people that gravitate to that know-it-all behavior also have a tendency of gravitating to people that are narcissistic in nature. Very narcissistic as far as it's their way or the highway. They're very centered in themselves. And anytime that you bring up a thought or something outside of their thinking or outside of their thoughts or choosing, they squash it. And I find that very interesting. And I find that there is a segment of our society, and I think it's more women than men, but I actually think that it actually crosses over to everybody. It affects everyone, and it depends on how you were raised and what dynamic you were raised in. Were you raised around people that were very open-minded? Were you raised around people that really shared ideas and listened to your ideas? Were you raised around a mother or father that wanted to hear what you had to say? Were you raised around a mother or father that didn't know everything and didn't try to act like they knew everything? Or quite the opposite. Were you raised around somebody that was very in your face, very in charge? The world revolved around them. What they said was gospel. They said it with such, directness and belief that it was real that you bought into it. And it's interesting because I find that when we grow up around these types of people, we have a tendency of surrounding ourselves with people like this. And I know that many of you that are listening to this podcast right now on the radio show, you might have a parent, a mother, or a father who tends to connect with that type of behavior. They seem to connect with that behavior with people. So they choose the financial advisor who is completely out of line and tells them what to do and doesn't listen to them one bit. They choose the doctors that tell them what to do but don't ask for any feedback. When they give an idea, it's shot down because it's not the doctor's idea. They find friends or people around them that have these, overarching personalities. But honestly, some of them are just full of shit, right? And so when we go through this process, it's interesting, especially when we have our aging parents where we're dealing with that sort of thing. And, I don't like to talk about age. It's not something that I think is always appropriate, but I think sometimes it's hard when you know that there's things coming down the path that you're going to have to deal with, that only you will deal with for this person. It can be very irritating and insulting when you realize that this person has surrounded themselves with a care team or an organization that all they're about is being in charge. And it's not about listening to other people's opinions or thought. It's about squashing those opinions and thought only for the mere reason of that it wasn't their thought process. It wasn't their choosing. It wasn't what they wanted to do. And so today's podcast, our radio show, and some of you might hear it on the radio, some of you might hear it on Apple Podcasts or Spreaker or Spotify. however you find it, you found it. Just glad you're here. Please share it with family and friends. And also, if you haven't already, I have a YouTube channel. Check that out too if you want to learn more about, having healthier relationships or being able to identify unhealthy relationships or dealing with that narcissist or understanding how to find or how to identify that narcissist that you work with, those types of things. And so you can go to YouTube and you can put in Ashley, Berges, Ashley Burgess, or put in Ashley Berges, Life Coach Ashley Burgess, and you'll find my channel, Life Coach Ashley Burgess. So we have lots of videos up every week, more than 1,000 videos housed on YouTube right now. And join us because we have a great community of subscribers as well. So, let's get back to this concept of what we're talking about here. I find it interesting because, from my own personal life and my own life, I'm the only child. And I know that some of you listening are the only child. Some of you listening are not the only child, but you might be the only child that's taking care of your family, right? Because the other ones might have just checked out. Maybe they didn't get along. Maybe they don't have time. Whatever the fact is, it is what it is. And you know what that's like. It's because you know that there's stress coming around. You know that there's things that have to get done. You know that the buck is going to stop with you. Okay. And so this show is dedicated to anybody who's an only child or is the child, the grown-ass woman or man that's going to end up taking care of their mom, their father, or both as they're getting older. And I find it interesting because I feel like our generation, my generation, and even younger generation, and maybe just a little older generation, I feel like we've gotten to the point where we're doing a lot of due diligence on our own. We're doing a lot of thoughtfulness on our own. Like I think about things. I educate myself. I research stuff. I really look to see, and Buddy here's in the studio here. No acoustics can stop that sound for sure with his little collar. He loves to hang out here. He's here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, basically. He is the studio mascot, so he is here. But, it's interesting because we do this research. And I do. I research all kinds of vitamins and minerals and things like that make sense, right? Things that make sense for longevity, things that make sense for health, things that make all this sense. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of laboratory experiments and documentation and all this type of stuff on the effects of all these things. It's not like it's just some cockeyed idea out of the blue that I formulate and believe in. You do your due diligence, you look at things and you see what makes sense or what might work for you and what might make your life better or make you healthier. And all these things are very interesting. And I find that the more and more research I do, the more and more information I get. And the information that I get is very helpful because it can not only change your life, but I've actually done it. And I've done it with myself. I've done it with family members, friends, and clients where we can take a health situation at one point in time and completely augment it, transform it, and move it into something that is very positive and healthy. And it's not about something that has a bunch of side effects, you're not going to have all these issues, but it's something that's very natural that can actually work. No, it's not all the time, but if you can find that, that's pretty cool. And so, the entire idea of the show came to me because, honestly, today, early this morning, my mom was going in to have her annual done. And I guess she goes in twice a year, actually. So it's a semi-annual, evaluation, by a doctor that basically sees you, a couple of times a year, maybe a couple more times a year, maybe 4 times a year someone sees you. And that's enough, but it's not a lot, right? I mean, think about it. If you were a daughter or a son to somebody and all you saw your parent was 4 times a year, for a very short period of time, you probably wouldn't have a good grasp of what that person is dealing with, where they are in their mental faculties, where they are in their emotional situation, and how they're really feeling. Because for a few minutes a day, let's say for 4 days out of the year, you can pretty put on whatever you want to put on. You can put on any face, you can go through anything, and that's why consistency is a big thing. It's just like if you had a friend and you only saw that friend 4 times a year and for maybe 30 minutes at a time. Now, it's a very limited amount of time. It's a very short amount of time. And what you're going to learn is very limited depending on what that person wants to share with you or not, right? So all of these things are very important to understand because, when you see somebody day in and day out and you are observant and not completely self-centered, you are able to identify things that need to be discussed. You're able to identify things that need to come to fruition. You identify things where you say, okay, I see that this is an issue. It's like if you see somebody limping, every time you see them, you understand that there's something wrong. Now let's figure out, what can we get to the bottom of this? How do we know what's happening? What has caused this? And move forward with that. You're not just going to see the limp and just keep going, right? You're going to say, hey, what happened? Did you fall? Did something happen? Did you pull something? You're going to ask specific questions. Now, some things are harder to see because they might not be physical on the outside, right? It's things that we don't see necessarily, right? So, if somebody had fallen but they had internal bleeding, you're probably not going to see that. You might see a bruise, but you're not going to see internal, right? If somebody is having issues that we can't really see on the outside, it might be harder to see or harder to diagnose or harder to understand. And so sometimes it takes a person that's in the inside, right? Somebody that's around all the time to be able to see those things and then help give the eyes on, the eye in the sky, and help that person, to maybe see some things that they need to work on or see some directions to really help them. And so my mom has been dealing with some nerve issues, with her feet and what have you. And she's having some pain, and there's times where her feet go numb. And they don't think it's neuropathy, but there's, and so that's one, they don't feel like it is that, the specialist. But, I started doing a lot of research on things that you can take, and I'm not going to sit there and prescribe or give ideas or prescriptions on the podcast, but there's some things that you can do some research. And if you're interested in discussing this kind of stuff with me, you can definitely go to my website. You can contact me. Go to ashleyburgess.com, Ashley, BERGES.com. You can click on that contact page. If you want to make an appointment, you can go to ashleyburgess.com, go to coaching sessions. You can just set up an appointment right there directly. Either way. But I've figured out a lot of things, and I've done a lot of research, and I've had I've really had some people around me too that that are medical doctors that say, hey, yeah, you're right. I've really researched that too myself, and I agree with you. And so I came up with an idea, something that's good and something that you can actually take that's tangible, that could actually help my mother, that has been proven to regrow nerve tissue, at least stop continuing nerve damage, and as well as doing some other things as well. So as well as helping with mental capability, right? As well as helping with that brain tissue, as well as just feeling better in general, maybe having some more energy, feeling more awake and aware, okay? And so these are very important things that I think are important even in my own life, much less her life. So I think it's very important. So today, early this morning, I called my mom while she was in a doctor's appointment. We had talked about that, so it's not like I did it out of the blue. And I was going to share with her physician just, an idea that I had and something to consider. And it didn't happen to happen then, but I just wanted him to consider it. And I said, hey, I'd love you to consider this. And I brought up the supplement and explained why, people take it. And he basically just told me that it was snake oil and that he would not prescribe, he wouldn't have anything to do with it. And that if I wanted to talk my mother into it on her own, then so be it. But he has no involvement. And then basically told me to get off the phone and that he has no time for this. And, that just really, 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 really rubbed me the wrong way. And I know that many of you are taking care of your parents, or that you will be taking care of your parents. And if you've ever dealt with something like this, you know what I'm thinking right now. You know how I'm feeling right now, because literally you've done the research, you're trying to help them, and this person's shutting you down. And so when I return, I'll be talking more about this personality, and what can we do to overcome some of this? What can we do to get past this and move on and help our parents in the process, but also keep them healthy and have them help and start listening to some of the things that we come up with? Stay tuned. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Turn it up and jump in the deep end on Perspectives. Now, here's Ashley.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. Right before the break, I was talking about what happened. I was on the phone during my mom's doctor's appointment earlier this morning, and I was offering some thoughts on a very healthy, very easygoing supplement with very little side effects, if any, to help my mom with some of the health issues that she's having. And instead of getting the response that I had hoped to get from a physician that seemed to care about my mom, I presume, I got the opposite. I got a very rude response. I got a response in a way that was not only rude and off-putting, but there was no reason to be that rude. And then on top of that, I was told that they believe it was snake oil. And it's something that people have been taking forever. It's something that people take quite a bit of, and it's something that a lot of people have a lot of good effects from. So it's not just something I've made up. It's something that's been around for a very long, long time. And I was really insulted, quite honestly. I really, really, really was insulted. But not only insulted, it angered me. Because you don't care enough about another person's idea or opinion of someone that's going to be someone's caregiver at some point in time. And the fact that I care enough to even have that call in the middle of my workday means a lot. And the fact that I was calling to try to help my mother. And my mom doesn't take my advice all the time because, like I was saying earlier, there's a large segment of society where they take advice from people that are know-it-alls. They take advice from people that are very self-centered, and they take advice from people that they think are very hard-hitting. And so if you're kind of easygoing, you can present all the knowledge you have, but it's not coming off that same powerful bam, 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 you will listen to everything I say kind of way. And that's just not the way I operate because I don't agree with that type of behavior. I also am not self-centered, and I also don't know everything, okay? Just don't. Nobody does. And I don't try to act like I do. But it's hard when you're trying to compete with these people, with various family members and friends, to try to help them, but they're so used to this type of behavior. They're so used to that type of a person and getting information from them that they don't even understand getting information from someone that's solid, but also somebody that has learned and is willing to say if they've made mistakes, just willing to say, hey, this is the research I've done. Why don't you do some of this research and see if this is something that makes sense to you instead of this will happen, this will be the way it is. And it was very off-putting, and I'm sure that some of you out there are listening to this and you've dealt with this, where you're trying to help your mother, you're trying to help your father, but you seem to come to these crossroads with these people. And, it's hard because the thing that bugged me is when I got off the phone is that you don't have to deal with her 24/7. You don't have to be there for her. Once this appointment is over, you're basically done. And you only see somebody for 30 minutes, and out of that 30 minutes, that's the information you get. And I know that you out there are sitting there going, yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm worried or I'm trying to be proactive, but what do I do? How do I get them to see what I'm going through? How do I get them to understand what I see? And how do I get some help in this world when it comes to that? And then also on the other side, I'd finally gotten my mother to take this suggestion. It only took a few times because you know what? The evidence is real. But within a moment, this person torpedoes a possible positive solution to a painful problem that she has. I can't even explain how disappointed I am because there were multiple things that could have been said. One could have been like, hey, that's an idea. Let me do some research on that and get back with you. It didn't have to be an ultimate, yeah, for sure. But the fact that it was shot down completely by a complete know-it-all really, really upset me. Because only a know-it-all will not actually listen to the facts. Only a know-it-all won't sit back and say, hey, you know what, I haven't thought about that. It might not have been on the forefront of my brain, but that might be something. Let me get back with you. Okay, let me get back with you. I mean, that's an educated consideration. And I just couldn't believe that somebody did that. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about more of that in just a second. Live Your True Life Perspectives with me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Jake Busey, and you're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, we're talking about these types of people, these types of folks that a lot of us either have to deal with or we've stopped dealing with, or maybe our family members or our mother or father is dealing with. And it can be overwhelming because it's at the situation. I've been giving the example of, the people that my mom tend to listen to. And those people tend to have that same dynamic, that same very self-centered, very know-it-all, very narcissistic in nature, and they have that persona. Okay. And she has a tendency of listening to that persona because it works for her, right? Because she's used to that from growing up. And I know that many of you understand that. Maybe you fall into that category and you're working to overcome that. We've fallen into that, maybe that codependency category. We've fallen into that, category where we've been kind of given that over and over again in our lifetime. And so we're used to that type of behavior or pattern of behavior. And so we get used to it. Now, whether it's healthy, that's a totally different story, right? But we're used to that pattern of behavior. And so we're used to listening to those types of people that may not know anything, but they actually claim that they know everything. And it's disturbing. And I've been on Facebook recently and on social media with a lot of people talking about how it can be really hard to get somebody that, to take, to listen, to take account when you're not presenting it in that type of way. Okay. And so when you're not presenting it in a way that they're used to, as far as that overarching self-centered, I know everything, this is this, you will listen to me. When you're presenting that in a more educated, tactful way, sometimes you get not only blowback, but sometimes you don't even get listened to. And that's what I find is irritating in today's world, is that I find, it's like you can be the most kind person, but that most kind person can be completely walked all over. And, that's something that I had to learn a while back, is that people see kindness as a flaw. And I think that that's wrong. And, when people think that kindness is a flaw, and it gets irritating because sometimes when people see you as a very kind person, they think that they can do anything they want to. And I'm not saying we have to grow a pair, but we have to be aware of some of the things that people consider when they think that kindness is weakness. And that's the sad thing, is that I feel like when we're trying to help family members and friends that are used to that type of behavior, they're used to that type of behavior. When we're around, or we're, sharing an idea or a thought or a consideration that can be helpful for them, we might get overlooked because we're the person that's not screaming. We're the person that's not demanding. We're the person that's not telling them what they're going to do. Okay? And that's the thing, is that I know that many of you out there are like, yeah, I'm the one that has to take care of this. I'm going to be the one that has to take care of this person in the end. And nobody's helping you. And that's what I find is interesting, is that I also find, too, that the better care we have, and this is something that is very near and dear to my heart, and something that's very important to me, and something that, every client that's ever worked with me can vouch for this, is the fact that I do care and I listen. And there's no judgment. If somebody comes in with something, there's no judgment. I mean, why would you judge something when somebody's telling you something on any level? Because all that judgment does is it takes away from the possibilities of the truth. The judgment takes away from solution. The judgments get in the way of finding solution. Okay? And yeah, sometimes we can all misinterpret things, right? Misinterpretation can happen at any time, but it's getting the clarity to go forward from that miscommunication. And, that's the thing, is that today, that call had there was no piece of that call on that other side of the conversation that was at all pleasant, thoughtful, caring, or judgment-free. Everything was in that. There was literally, I'm going to tell you what to do. I am going to force this down your throat. 2, I don't care. I don't have time for you. And 3, on top of that, I'm not listening to anything you have to say. Even if it's the most important thing, even if you were a Nobel Peace Prize winner, I'm still not going to listen to what you have to say. Because what you have to say is way beneath what I know. And that's the condescending crap that many of us are dealing with on our day-to-day basis. And I feel that it's like, we have to call this out. We have to begin to call this out, because the anger and the resentment that comes from that can also echo or be moved into other areas of your life, right? Also, in this particular situation, I have to sit there and remember to isolate that type of anger, not from not toward my mother, but toward just the situation of this person in general. And it's hard because when you finally making movement in the right direction and somebody torpedoes the positive movement, that sets things back so much. And that person, because of their ego and because of their being misguided based on ego, creates that reality that we all have to suffer in, right? Because the suffering is going to be real. The suffering will be real, because what happens is, if this person needed that and can't get that and is not able to have that, and they could have used this and this could have worked for them and it could have changed their life in some way, instead of taking some sort of pharmaceutical that's going to give them all these side effects, that could have been very helpful. But because we missed the boat on that, because I was told that my idea was snake oil, right? Okay. And it's like I don't want to talk about what it is, because I don't want, I don't want to be like, I don't want people to get the idea and then go out and get it without having the knowledge base of what they need. That's the only reason I'm not talking about exactly what I'm talking about here, because I want to protect. And if you're interested in hearing about this, then go on and reach out, on ashleyburgess.com, ashleyberges.com. Click on that contact page, send me a message, or go on Facebook, find it Ashley Burgess, send me a message, or go to ashleyburgess.com and click on that coaching session and set up an appointment. It's like, but the thing that bothers me is the disregard for other people's thoughts that are very well thought out, the research that's gone into that, but also the fact that I came to you for a reason, not just because I'm trying to make your life difficult, or not just because I want to hear myself being hurt, being talked. I don't want to just hear myself talk. I haven't reached out to this person. I haven't been in an appointment with her in 10 years. It's not like I'm doing this all the time. This is the first time in a decade. I mean, I think the first time in a decade actually kind of says something. Like, this is important. Could you take a deep breath and stop thinking about yourself for one moment and listen to what I have to say? For literally, I was on the call for 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Okay. And just so I think that's the time. I should probably go back and look to make sure it was 2 minutes, because it might not have been 2 minutes. It could have been a lot less than that. Let me look real quick so I can tell you. Oh, it was 2 minutes to the dot. 2 minutes. 2 minutes complete. So there were no seconds, just 2 solid minutes on that phone call. So I was on that call for 2 minutes. You haven't seen me in over a decade, and you're going to just squash what I have to say like that. And that, again, just goes back and rolls all over you. And I think for anybody out there that understands, maybe you have a spouse that's been going through health issues, and you're dealing with some of these people that are just so narcissistic and self-involved. It's like, you've got to find another type of care team. You've got to find other people that will actually listen to reason. And I find it so challenging, because just to get to somebody to listen to reason, that's all we're asking. We're not asking to we're not talking about Disneyland. We're not talking about unicorns. We're not talking about any of this. We're talking about reason. And to get somebody to listen to reason, they've got to be able to step back from their own ego, step back from their own thoughts in that moment, and just listen to someone else's thought for 2 minutes. And, it could have gone so much differently. It could have there could have been, hey, you know what, that's a good idea. Let me look into it. I'll get back. It didn't have to be automatic. It could have been like, hey, I have done research on that, and you're right. Let's look into that. That's a good idea. Or it could be like, hey, there's some other options too that maybe you haven't thought of, that maybe that would be better for her as well. Whatever. But the whole shutdown, to me, is a shutdown on my mother's wellness. It's a shutdown on the encouragement that I'm trying to give her. It's a shutdown on her getting better. It's a shutdown on the progress. And that's it. And I know that some of you are feeling it. I know that some of you are going through it. I know that some of you are feeling it. You are feeling it because you're dealing with this on a constant basis. Maybe not just with one family member, maybe multiple family members. Maybe you're having to take over a lot of things and you're realizing that everybody in your mother's life or in your father's life or in your aunt's life or whoever has been really bullying them for a long period of time. And they've just kind of been bullied into whatever this person wants them to do, whether it's their financial advisor, whether it's their doctor, whether it's whoever, their business partner. And these are the things that are interesting because the same people that get bullied into these situations have had kind of a upbringing of being bullied as well, right? Because we get used to it. And it doesn't make it, oh, that's so sad. Or, it's not like this is like, it can be changed. We can change this. We can augment this. I had a client yesterday, we were talking, they found a new accountant. And they said, I'm so glad I found this new accountant, but I'm scared to tell my old accountant that I'm done. And I said, this person has been literally putting you on the back burner. This person doesn't have time for you. They bill you an insane amount of money, and they're not getting things done. And then you're really scared about telling them that you're going to end your work with them. You're a paying customer. That's crazy. They still haven't finalized things for you for 2 years ago that need to be done. And you're scared to say, hey, I found someone else. And that's behavior. That's normal behavior when you've been around these egotistical, narcissistic people your whole life. And then you go out and find people just like that you pay to be in your life. You're paying them to be in your life. And think about that real quick. You're paying someone to be in their life, to be in your life, to do something for you, and you're taking crap? Think about that. You're paying this doctor. You're paying your lawyer. Your lawyer doesn't have time for you. I can't get to that case until after the new year. Or, hey, yeah, I know this employment agreement's important to you. I'm going to give it 2 hours because this isn't enough money for me. So I'm going to do a really crappy job on this deal. And you're going to end up getting screwed in the end. But it's okay. Okay? So this is the thing that I feel like a lot of us are dealing with, whether it's with our family. But in the end, we're paying people to do a job or a service. And then you're getting crap back. And I feel like there's some older folks, and we don't need to talk about age, but some people that have been on the planet longer than we have that seem to fall into that pattern of accepting that. I even have younger clients that seem to fall into the pattern of that as well. It's not an age thing. I have clients that are in their 30s that seem to they like to be bossed around, and it's or told what to do. And that's something that you're not going to hear in sessions with me. I'm never going to tell somebody what to do. Because the person has to make the choice. Because if I make a choice for somebody or tell somebody what to do and it doesn't work out, that's bad. But if I give you options, hey, look at this option. What about this option? What about that option? Let's look at this. This is a possibility over here. Have you thought about this? Most of the time people haven't, right? They haven't thought about it because it's so close to them. They don't realize that there's all these options. And that's what I'm saying is that we need to encourage our family members, our friends, to try to see this dynamic that they're living in, where they're picking these people that, know everything for sure. They act like they know everything, but they don't really know anything. Or what they know is limited, and they're making us believe that they know everything. And, it's easy to con someone into believing something. It's easy to con someone into believing something, especially if they want to believe it. If you want to believe this stuff and you want to believe that, all of this is, whatever, great. But the thing is that it's often that same type of person that has that same type of mentality, that has that same type of approach. Okay. And I find that a lot of people fall for that. And whether they hire people all around them that have that same approach. They get hurt by people around them that have that same approach. They feel unheard by the people around them with that same approach, but they don't know anything different. They don't know another way. And that's what kind of disturbed me today on that phone call. That disturbed me. And I don't use that word often because I think that word is way overused. But it disturbed me because this is someone's health. This is their life. And this is their family member encouraging them to take a more natural approach to their health with lots of research and lots of thought. behind it. And, I was even talking to my own physician, and him and I are friends. And, he used to be the physician to a president of the United States. This person's pretty smart, pretty educated guy. Okay. And we even talked about that stuff. And he was like, man, that's a great idea. And I started taking this. And he's like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. I would present that to your mom's physician as well. So it's not like this was just a crackpot scheme that I came up with. This was a well thought out plan. And so that is the only thing. And I know that if you're going through this or you're experiencing this type of behavior with people that are caregiving for your family or in some sort of role, it's like we got to figure out how to get rid of these people. We got to figure out how to find better people and how to get them to agree to get rid of these people to help themselves, to help us, to help them. And I'm going to have a lot of shows about this because this is really close to my heart right now, because we've got to make some of these changes for them, their sake, and for ours. Stay tuned. When we return, we'll be talking more about this. Live Your True Life Perspectives with your host, me, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. I'll be back this time in 2 shakes.
Get in here. You're listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to Live Your True Life Perspectives, and I'm your host, Ashley Burgess. On today's show, I've been talking about those know-it-all type personas, those people that seem to know everything, but they seem to just not even agree to even listen to other people's opinions. They don't have enough knowledge base to not do that, and they continue to do that, and we can see that a lot of times in folks like lawyers, doctors, accountants, that list goes on, right? And so a lot of times people will hire people in those roles that have this persona, this very, kind of self-centered, powerful, I know everything persona, because they're so used to that from their family dynamic, whether it was their mother or their father, that type of that person and how they were to them growing up, and then what they ended up seeing as powerful or smart or strong based on that upbringing. And I recently had a call with one of my mother's physicians today, and it really, really, really rubbed me the wrong way. And it was interesting, and I've been talking about this, but and I'll continue, is that the problem is that type of behavior is just not even necessary. And that type of behavior doesn't give a solution. That type of behavior is very limited, right? What happens there is her care has already been limited. So now I realize that we're dealing with someone that can't think outside of the box, is not willing to, does not want to take advice or thought from anybody else. And so therefore, the only care she's getting is that one individual brain. That's it. There's nothing else there. And that concerns me. Just like it would concern me if this was someone's lawyer that didn't take into consideration, something that had just passed or some sort of law or some idea that was brought up. I don't want to hear any of that. Okay, well, great, but this could pertain to the case. This could actually help. This could make you change things, but you're not going to hear any of that because you're better than that. You're smarter than that. Great. And that's where I think that we fall short. That's where I feel like we have problems in our society. That's where things get kind of like sticky in our situations, is when we're not getting that type of help. It would be like going to a therapist or a life coach who's judging you on the things that you do in your life. So instead of being able to talk freely in session so that you can get help and understanding on how to make your life better and how to make changes to feel better, to deal with stress or anxiety or deal with a relationship, instead of that, you're over there trying to explain yourself on something that you shouldn't have to explain yourself on. The last thing you want to do is have to deal with that with somebody that's judging you in a situation where you actually just need guidance and help. And I'm going to be doing some other podcasts on this subject too, because I feel like there's so many of us who, whether we're having to deal with it as a secondary, ancillary situation, like my mom in the situation and the choices of the people that she's made in her life, that definitely is going to affect me at some point, right? So if he was a really out-of-the-box guy that had some really great ideas, some really good cutting-edge ideas of how to make my mom healthier, that would be very advantageous for her, but also for me and anybody around her and anybody around me, and that would be helpful. But because it seems so shut down and closed down, now what I'm dealing with is I'm going to have to fight the system, right? So it's like until she can see that the system is antiquated and that the system's not working for her, I have to then fight the system, or I have to show her over and over again how this might not be the right situation for her. And with that, it's day after day, month after month, year after year, that we could be having better care or better knowledge, but we don't because I'm trying to be able to show the way because it's bigger than the doctor, right? It's this archetype, a person that she's used to being around, that she's used to hearing from, that she's used to taking, direction from. It's not just him. He's just a symptom of the upbringing. And so having to explain that and then explain the situation and then overcome that and then overcome her fear of letting that go and moving on with somebody that could actually work better for her. If this show is connected with you, reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. You can go to my website, ashleyburgess.com, and you can just send me a message on contact. You can also find me on social medias. I'm on all of them except for like one or two of them, but we're on everything: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, everything. So reach out to me, and I'd love to hear from you and your perspective. If you're going through this with a family member right now where you're having to deal with these people and the family member's not listening to you because you're not that narcissistic, self-centered person, I would love to interview it. I'd love to talk with you because I want to put together, a grouping of folks who are going through this so that we can actually work to overcome this and show our family members what's really happening. It's not about the doctor or the lawyer or whoever. It's about them and their choosing of these people and how the choosing of these people are limiting their successes or limiting their ability and are getting in the way of them being healthy in some cases because that person is not willing to listen to any outside resources or thought processes. So I hope that this has inspired you to start taking things, and start looking at things. Maybe taking that call when your parent is in the doctor's office. Starting to think about these things and seeing what happens because it could actually make some sense and it could go a long way to you understanding what's going on and getting more knowledge to help you and to help them. Stay tuned. Live your true life perspectives. With me, your host, Ashley Burgess, will be back in. Well, you know it. I'll be back this time. I'm back this time in 3 shakes.